One question. Because you had less than the usual rate of leakage in your studies.
Yeah. It's difficult to stand here because it's an audience of surgeons, but it is what it is. I don't lie, I publish it. And,
yeah. Do you think it's because you suture your way to do this sleepless night?
We oversaw, we use a 3O Vicryl with an SH needle. We run it from proximal to distal. It is not a suture to reinforce a staple line per se. My thinking is that if we have leaks from a staple line, is because you have this small probably hematoma that might burst. So I do it more than anything to prevent bleeding. But I think that the bougie size, staying away from the incisura angularis, yesterday talking to some colleagues, they tell me, oh, I go close to the pylorus. I use a 36 bougie, and I got really, really tight. And I just wonder how many times you had a stricture, how many times you had a leak if you do that. So I put the bougie not to calibrate the size of the stomach, but to have feeling when we resect that stomach. We're creating a new stomach. So the bougie to me is just a filler, but I never get close to the bougie. And I use 38. So, which is 0.3 French. It's really minimum. I don't know why, but that's what we do. Staying away from the fat pad, staying away from the incisura angularis, 38 bougie, and probably the oversawing. Well, the oversawing is the least one that prevents leaks, in my opinion. To know the answer.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to invite Dr. Beglaibter to speak about the internal herpes.
Morning. When Nasser asked me to talk about small bowel obstruction post-bariatric surgery, I said to myself, oh, not again. This subject was chewed up to death. I'm not going to talk about the JJ, the Peterson, or the JJ. Doing it anticolic, retrocolic, to close, not to close, with running suture, with simple stitches, and etc., etc. So, with his consent, it was Nasser's idea, I would like to talk, coming 10 minutes, about small bowel obstruction post-single anastomosis procedures. Those are my disclosures. And when we talk about single anastomosis procedures, we talk mainly about the mini gastric bypass, a little bit about single anastomosis, the SADIs, and the procedure which is done mainly in India, the SASIs. Those are the single anastomosis procedures done today worldwide. So, and of course we talk about the Peterson, there's no JJ, and it can come from left to right. It can come from right to left, either way, and we must look at what's happening around the world regarding single anastomosis procedures, and because if they are not so common, we don't have a problem. But if they are common and becoming more and more common, we're going to face a problem. So when you look at the Ambisani paper, appeared in 2017, but taking into account cases done until 2021 or 4, you see that mini gastric bypass is 1.8%, and it's quite stable from 2017 to 2014, although it was tripled from 0.6 to 1.8%, but this is still a very small number. So if it's a small number, we don't have a really problem. But when you look what happened a couple of years later, the data from this year, you can see that around the world, in Asia, it is more than 30%, in Eastern Europe, in Middle East, and worldwide it's 10%. But it's 10% because we do it more, and in the United States, it almost, they don't do it at all. But in some parts of the world, in our part of the world, the mini gained popularity, and if there is a problem with hernias, it's going to be a real problem. Now, if you look at what happened in Israel, and those are figures from 2016, the mini was done almost 20%. And now we have rough figures of 2017, it reaches almost 30% of the cases are mini cases. And this is exactly what happened in my hospital. My service is in a rather small community hospital of less than 300 beds. We are the small branch of Hadassah in Mount Scopus. And you can see that we started doing the minis 3 years ago, and this is what happened to our sleeves, and this is what happened to our minis. And nowadays, almost 30% of our operations are minis. So if small bowel obstruction due to internal hernia is a problem, it's going to be a huge one. But I looked at and I must tell you, I want to go back to in my experience of almost 200 mini bypasses, we had bleedings, we had ulcers, we had even one gastric fistula, but we didn't have any small bowel obstruction. And when you go to the literature, you can find only four case reports. This is 1, 2, 3, 4 in the English literature, not anymore, of hernias. So I said, you know, instead of looking for cases, for case reports, let's look at a big series, and then of course you think about Rutledge, Musella, Chevalier, Carbajo, and you can see the number of cases, midterm to long follow-up, with good follow-up, and NM stands for not mentioned. So in those papers, this complication was not even mentioned. The WGE report, one case. The Chevalier states that he had none. Jammu had none. Taha had none. The Musella from 2017, which is a paper, a very interesting paper about complication in MGB, had one. So if you sum up all the figures and you let out the Musella of the 900 because it is already included in the 2,600, you come up with an incidence of one case per almost 6,000 operations. It is very interesting to see the WGE paper, which actually compares RUI to minis, and you can see bowel obstruction in RUI is 0.8%, and one case of an obstruction because of internal hernia in the mini. The same, the Musella paper about complications, a very good paper, which sums up the whole area of complications for the mini gastric bypass, only one case. Percentage, 0.1. Same with Jammu. Of course, no internal hernias in the sleeve, 6 in the RUI and 0 in the MGB. And Chetan Parmar was yesterday, I don't know if he's here today in the audience. he wrote the paper together with Mahawar, a systematic review, and he comes up with the same number I just showed you. The Peterson hernia is approximately 1 to every 5,000 cases. Now, the incidence of complications in the DS, I talked only about the mini gastric bypass because we are doing mini gastric bypass, and the DS and the SADI, single anastomosis DS, is even more marginal in percentage worldwide. And in this survey, a multi-center experience with prominent figures in the field of DS, the Collins, Torres, Rosling, none of our patients, and this is an exact quote, none of our patients experienced volvulus in the DI or an internal hernia. So then you ask yourself, okay, so why is it so? We have the Peterson. We have a Peterson in the RUI. We have a Peterson in the MGB, and those are the figures of Peterson's hernia without closing the space. The Higa series show, which is actually Rosenthal and many others, and you can see that internal hernias in the Peterson. Not overall internal hernias, including the JJ. Only in the Peterson, it is somewhere between 0.5% to 0.25% to 4, 5, 6%. And we don't see it in mini bypasses. Because in my opinion, not all the Peterson are created equal. There are a few differences. In the RUI, the pouch is small. The gastrojejunostomy is very high, and the mesentery, sometimes it's divided, but sometimes not. But the MGB is totally different. You have a long pouch. The gastrojejunostomy is the mid-abdominal, at least lower than the usual gastrojejunostomy in RUI, and it is always an omega loop. Widespread omega loop. So I don't know how those differences affect the point that we have less hernias in the mini Peterson, but this is the reality. So in conclusion, the internal hernia post-MGB is very rare, and it's estimated to be 1 to almost 6,000 cases. There are no comparative studies of closing versus non-closing, and in my opinion, there will never be any such study. So if you're doing a mini and you want to close the Peterson, God bless you. But if you don't have to worry very much. There is no support in the literature up to now with a positive recommendation for a routine closure. So I thank you very much for giving me those 10-15 minutes to talk about an issue which in my opinion is a non-issue. Thank you.
Thank you.